See, they are asking you a question. The part of the brain consisting of fiber tracts that forms a bridge between two hemispheres. What else do you need to conclude that they are asking about? Corpus callosum. This is how you make mistakes in the examination hall. In examination hall, under pressure, the moment you read a question, you will get so much irritated that you finally understand that you know the answer and you simply mark the answer for this question. Corpus callosum is a band, it's a bridge between two hemispheres of the cerebrum and not the cerebellum, but they are asking you cerebellum in this question. That is the catch point over here. This is the catch point in this question. They are asking you something that connects the two hemispheres of the cerebellum and not the cerebrum. So this is my wrong answer. Let's understand this with the diagram. Okay, so this is my midbrain, this is my pons, and this is my medulla. The brain stem, isn't it? Midbrain, pons, and medulla. So here I can see that there is a bulging here, and what is present here? Here CSF is present. Okay, CSF is present. So this is my midbrain, this is my pons, this is my medulla. This is my cerebellum. Now, cerebral aqueduct and corpora quadrigemina are two structures which are present on the midbrain. The cerebral aqueduct connects the third ventricle with fourth ventricle. This is my fourth ventricle. See, CSF is present inside the fourth ventricle. This is my fourth ventricle, which is present behind the pons. So behind the midbrain is something that is connecting the fourth ventricle. So this is my aqueduct of Sylvius or cerebral aqueduct. The other name for cerebral aqueduct is aqueduct of Sylvius. Okay, Sylvius. So this is my other name for cerebral aqueduct. So that is connecting the midbrain with the, so it is passing behind in the midbrain itself. See, aqueduct of Sylvius is passing in the midbrain itself, but that is connecting the third ventricle with the fourth ventricle. Fourth ventricle is below it. Here you can see this is my fourth ventricle. That particular part that I am going to shade now is my fourth ventricle. This is my fourth ventricle now. Okay, so this is my fourth ventricle, and whatever lies above this is the aqueduct of Sylvius or the cerebral aqueduct. Above that is my third ventricle. Okay. Now, they are saying that it forms a bridge between the two hemispheres of the cerebellum, isn't it? So what is lying just in the line of cerebellum now? Pons is lying in the cerebellum, just in front of that. So if you know this diagram, you can safely conclude that my answer will be definitely pons, because that is lying in proximity to the cerebellum. So my answer for this question is pons. So pons is the structure that forms a bridge between the two cerebral hemispheres of the cerebellum. Okay, and the fibers which pass between the higher levels of the brain and the spinal cord. See, from the brain, for anything to come down, it has to go through this pathway, isn't it? This is the direction of transmission of an impulse from the brain to the other part of the body. So it has to go through the pons, obviously. So that is a very simple way of understanding this. This is more complex than this, but yes, pons is the structure to know. You can just remember this particular question. This is an important question for your exam. Okay, it's an important concept-based question. You can simply understand that pons is lying in front of the cerebellum. So pons should be my answer. You can safely conclude this. Right? Next question is very easier. Which forms the major part of the human brain? Major part of the human brain, is it by cerebellum? No. Is it by medulla oblongata? Just a small part. Is it by the thalamus? An extremely small part which is lying above this. See, midbrain above this is the thalamus. Now cerebrum is my answer. Cerebrum is very big, isn't it? You can hold the cerebrum with two hands. So you will say that yes, this is my correct answer. This is a directly given answer in the textbook. You can simply remember this. The biggest part of the human brain is cerebrum. So friends, take a look at this very basic question. 20 types of amino acids are coded by how many total sense codons? Very basic concept is tested over here. So you might be knowing that for an amino acid to come or whenever there is translation occurring from the mRNA, protein is synthesized, isn't it? So during that time, it is based on these particular codons that they determine which type of amino acid should come over there and bind. So the point is, see, you have codons. How many codons? 64 codons. Okay, 64 codons are present in your body. Now, this 64 codons can be divided into two. This first part is called as sense codons. Whenever there is a sense codon, you will get an amino acid. Sense codon means that it is actually for an amino acid. If you have a sense codon, you have an amino acid. If you have AUG, right, in a prokaryote it will be NF-methionine. In a eukaryote it will be methionine. So whenever AUG is there, you will have methionine. Whenever AUG is there, you are having an amino acid. So this AUG is a sense codon. You have 60 sense codon, not 60, 61 sense codons as it is, isn't it? 61 sense codons are present here. So 61 combinations like this can be there, and they are coding for protein, amino acid. Now that means sense codons are coding for proteins, amino acids, and the other one is called as non-sense. Okay, that means it does not code for amino acids. What are the codons that does not code for amino acid? Those are your stop codons. So nonsense codons are also called by the name of stop codons. What are the three examples of stop codons here? UAA, UAG, UGA. While you stain it in the laboratory, this is called as ochre. This is amber. Right, so these are the three names. So UAA is called by ochre, and UAG is amber, and UGA is opal. These are the other names for your stop codons. Whenever you have a stop codon, there will not be any amino acid. Stop codon does not code for an amino acid. You had sense codon, sense codon, sense codon. So you have amino acid, amino acid, amino acid. These are joined by the peptide bonds. Now suddenly you are having a stop codon, so there is no amino acid over there. So whatever chain of protein you are synthesizing, that will come to a stop. That is why you call it as stop codon. So I hope you are understanding this. So this is 3, and this is 3 codons, and this is the rest 61 codons. So 20 types of amino acids are coded. 20 is the total number of amino acids at your level. 20 is the total number of amino acids are coded by how many sense codons here? 61 is the answer. So option 2 is the correct answer. So only mistake that you can make is you may sometimes go into fourth option plus, but please remember they are exactly specifying that they are asking you sense codons, okay? Not the entire number of codons. You have nonsense codons also, which are 3 number. Nonsense means that they are not a sense codon, not like it is a nonsense or something. It is not a sense codon, so you call it as nonsense codon. That is it, right? Next question is about the Drosophila melanogaster, isn't it? Those experiments that he did, T.H. Morgan experiment with Drosophila melanogaster. It showed certain concepts which are called by the name of linkage, right? So the physical association between gene on a chromosome. See, on a chromosome you have multiple number of genes. Some of these genes are exactly very close to each other. So when genes are very close to each other on a chromosome, let us suppose that you have 2 genes over here. One gene is like this, and the other gene, let us suppose it is over here. Okay, so when they are very close to each other, they exhibit this kind of a linkage. They are linked to each other. They don't want to go away from each other. So whenever there is recombination taking place, whenever you are having a gamete synthesis, what happens is they have to have a recombination. During that particular time, these 2 genes exhibit that particular property by which they tend to move very close to each other, and that they don't go away from each other. So they don't make recombination, or new combinations are not produced by them. Wherever they are, they try to remain as it is, right? So in Drosophila melanogaster, the yellow body colored gene, that is small y, and white eye colored gene, that is W, showed this much percentage of recombination. Recombination means it is the percentage by which the children or the offsprings are differing from their parents. So here the children or the offsprings of Drosophila is showing this much what difference. So 1.3 percentage is the difference. See, 1.3 percentage is the difference. That means the rest percentage, that is 99.7 percentage, they are exactly similar. 99.7 percentage times it is similar simply means that your Y and W genes are very close to each other. They don't want to go away from each other. So they show linkage. Fine. Now in M and the other one, that is white eye gene and your miniature wing size, that is small m, it is showing this much amount of recombination. So here it is, the recombination is, or new combination that was possible is only 1.3%. Here the new combinations that you got is 37.2%. I mean, it is more. Okay, so 37.2% more recombination means that those two genes are away from each other. They are not, they are not so much aware that, or they are not so much linked to each other. They, whenever there is a recombination happening, they tend to go away from each other. But your 1.3% simply means that these two genes are exactly close in the same chromosome. So yes, you can say that W and Y are closer than W and M. So whenever you have two genes which are very close to each other, they tend to move together. Okay, so they don't tend to go away from each other, which leads to new combinations. No, that is not done by them. So this kind of a property, this kind of a behavior shown by genes on a chromosome is called by the name of linkage, and that was evident from this particular Drosophila melanogaster. Such a small organism, but yes, it has tremendous contributions in understanding genetics. Let's go to the next question now. Yes, this is a question that I have selected from the topic of human reproduction. So they are asking you about corpus luteum, isn't it? Corpus luteum. So how will I discuss this? You have a mature ovum. You have a mature ovum. Now this ovum is released from that particular follicle. Now it is released and this lady is ovulating. So when is the time of ovulation? If this female is having 28 days cycle. If this female is having 28 day cycle, if her menstrual cycle is of the length of 28 days, she will have ovulation on, or she will ovulate on the 14th day. Fine. So this is a very important sentence to remember. See, whenever a teacher asks a child of your age, so what is the day of ovulation? Your answer is just 14th day. So that is wrong. See, ovulation is on the 14th day, provided you are having 28 day cycle. So yeah, after the ovulation, so after ovulation, what happens is, whatever is remaining in the follicle, that mature Graafian follicle you had, once ovum is removed, whatever is left inside the ovary, that is called as corpus luteum. Fine. So yes, this is day 1 of the menstrual cycle, and this lady is having 28-day cycle. So so we understand that on the 14th day she will be having her ovulation. Okay. So this is your follicular phase or the proliferative phase. This is your luteal phase or the secretory phase. Fine. So from 14 to 28 days, any options that is having 14 to 28 days will be your answer. That is the time when you have a corpus luteum. And at the end of this particular time, before the next ovulation, this corpus luteum will become corpus albicans. It becomes white. Corpus albicans, white, and then it will be destroyed. So almost, yeah, 14 to 28 days. Any answer which is in this particular range will be your answer. 5 to 8, no. 11 to 17, no. 15 to 23 is your answer, right? I told you, just look for this kind of an approach over here. This is the range that you can just look for in the answer, and that is your answer for this particular question. Now, what does the corpus luteum do? It will secrete progesterone. What is the function of progesterone? See, just look at the name of this particular hormone. Just understand what are they trying to tell you with the name itself. See, this is gesterone, gestation. What does gestation mean? It means pregnancy, okay? And this progesterone, it is actually something that helps in progesterone, isn't it? Progesterone, something that helps in gestation, something that helps in pregnancy. It is something that maintains pregnancy, something that supports pregnancy, progesterone. Okay, so this is the meaning of that particular hormone. Just by the name itself, you will get multiple things, many concepts in these kind of, any science. See, name or the nomenclature is done, or there will be some catch point in the nomenclature of all these things that you can see over here. Right, so let's go to the next question now. Okay, so this is a good question. don't feel that it is beyond your syllabus and all those things. See, this is actually I got it from an AIMS paper, AIMS practice test that I had written around 5 years ago, 2015. Yeah, in 2015 this was asked by one of the coaching institutes in India. In case of post-menopausal female, so somebody who has crossed the age of 50. So when does a female have menopause? 50 years. Is it 50 years or around 50 years? Not like every female, whenever she is having her 50th birthday, she has menopause. No, it is around 50 years. So near to this 50 years, in that particular time period, she can have that. Sometimes it can be very lesser, sometimes it can be very higher. There has been instances like younger ladies who has not even married has undergone menopause. So things like that keeps on happening. But whenever they ask you what is the age for menopause, you will say nearly 50 years or around 50 years. Fine, around 50 years or lesser than that or more than that. Just that particular time period when she is around this 50 years, 45 to 65 years of age. 45 to 55 years of age. In that particular time period, most of the females will attain menopause. And after menopause, this particular female is supposed to be called by the name of postmenopausal female. Now in a postmenopausal female, what happens is she is not ovulating anymore. She is not ovulating. When does menopause occur? When all the follicles in the ovary are lost. I mean, they are used up, they are destroyed, or they are used up. Now there is nothing available over there. So if the follicle is not maturing again, when the follicle is not maturing again, then estrogen will be absent, isn't it? You know what happens is GnRH is released by the hypothalamus, and this will act on the pituitary. Pituitary will release FSH and LH. Okay, so this will act on the ovary. So this act on the ovary, and follicular stimulating hormone will lead to, maturation of follicle. When the follicle matures due to the influence of FSH. FSH is follicular stimulating hormone. It is stimulating the follicle. It is leading to the maturation of follicle. What happens is your follicle is starting to grow. So this is the time of follicular phase or the proliferative phase. So the first 14 days of your menstrual cycle is the time when this is going to happen. Follicular stimulating hormone is acting on the ovary, and this ovary is having one of the follicle is starting to increase in size. It is getting mature. As the follicle is maturing, it synthesizes and secretes estrogen. So who is secreting estrogen? Ovary secreting estrogen. What exactly in ovary? Developing follicle is secreting estrogen. Now around the 11th to 14th day, around this particular time, the LH will increase tremendously high. LH will be extremely high. That is called by the name of LH surge. LH surge. And this female will ovulate. Fine. She will ovulate. Now this particular ovum is removed from the ovary, and that is actually taken up by the fimbrial end of your fallopian tube, and that is taken to the ampullary stomach junction. Okay, fine. Now estrogen was synthesized now, and now there is a sudden decrease in estrogen. Slightly decrease in estrogen is seen over there. Now this particular whatever is remaining in ovary is called by the name of corpus luteum. That will actually synthesize progesterone. Fine. So this is the basic idea, and this is your luteal phase or secretory phase. So after 14th day, luteal phase or secretory phase will be seen. Now the point to remember is whenever there is an increase in estrogen, it provides a negative feedback on FSH and LH and also on GnRH. Okay, whenever there is an increase in amount of estrogen, it provides a negative feedback on the above hormones. Whatever is lying above this, it is having a negative feedback. If estrogen is high, GnRH, FSH, LH all decreases. Now think about a postmenopausal female. After menopause, she is not ovulating. That means estrogen is low. So in a postmenopause female, estrogen is low. If estrogen is low, there is no negative feedback. So FSH increases, LH increases, GnRH also can increase. Right? So FSH, LH and GnRH will be almost high. You can think about it in that way. Okay. So let's go to the options now. FSH is okay, estrogen is not okay. Inhibin. See, this is I call inhibin as the 2016 hormone, NEET 2016 hormone. Why? Because it was for the first time they asked a question on inhibin, and in fact, in that 2016 paper, they had asked two questions on inhibin. See, in two questions, in one of them, inhibin was the answer, and the other one, this inhibin was playing in the playing a role in the options, but that was not the answer in that case. So this inhibin was asked in 2016. Inhibin is synthesized in both males and females. Inhibin is synthesized in both females and males, and in both it decreases the FSH synthesis. It decreases FSH. Okay, so inhibin inhibits FSH. Inhibin inhibits FSH. Remember that. Now here FSH is high, but ovary is not working, so I'm not going to think about inhibin over here. FSH is high. There is nobody to inhibit it, so this is not my answer. FSH is okay, LH is okay, testosterone, let that remain now. FSH okay, progesterone, is progesterone high? She is not ovulating, so estrogen and progesterone is also low. Relaxin, do you require relaxin? Relaxin is required only at the time of parturition, during the time of delivery, to relax the uterus and cervix. So this is absolutely wrong. Why? Relaxin is not required there. Estrogen is it high or low? Estrogen is low. So this is wrong. So only this option is okay. Now you are having a confusion. This is the confusion now. Testosterone in female. So if you are a female watching this, if you are a girl watching this, you might be wondering if testosterone is there in your body. Yes, you have testosterone. See, testosterone is synthesized by ovary as well as your adrenal glands. Zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculata, zona reticularis. This zona reticularis is going to synthesize androgens, androgen and estrogen. So sex hormones are synthesized by that. So you are a male or a female, doesn't matter. In both of them, you have both estrogen and testosterone. In both males and females, both of them are having estrogen and testosterone. But in a female, testosterone will be such a very low level. Okay, it will be such a low level, and there is a balance between estrogen and testosterone in a female's body, and similarly in male's body also. But in males, testosterone will be much higher. That's the point you are supposed to remember over here. Now, once you are having a menopause, you can remember it in this way. After menopause, estrogen is decreasing. But adrenal glands will also produce testosterone. That will be higher because estrogen is low, but testosterone is high. So this balance between estrogen and testosterone is lost. That is why testosterone is seen to be higher in females who are after menopause. So this is one of a statement that you can remember if you want. Testosterone is higher in a female after menopause. It is a correct statement, right? Okay, so due to many reasons, you needn't go to much details over there. Remember, adrenal glands are also synthesizing this. Estrogen is suddenly reduced, so there is an increase in amount of testosterone. So whenever you have a balance between two things, if one of them is reduced, then the other will increase. Okay, so that kind of a phenomenon is seen in many cases. Whenever you have a condition, whenever there is a derangement. Otherwise, if something is decreasing, the other one will also decrease. But here, this is a condition where estrogen is suddenly decreased. So the body thinks that, okay, there is very less estrogen, so let me produce testosterone for that matter in a very high manner. So many reasons are there for understanding why testosterone is high in a female after menopause. Remember at your level that testosterone is higher in a female who is after menopause. Okay, so this was a thought-provoking question in a way, and this was asked in a practice paper, so I thought of discussing this with you at this moment. So guys, with that I am finding up this particular video. So in the next video I hope to cover the remaining questions that I have selected from these kind of topics. So there are certain other points that I wanted to discuss with you at this particular moment. Okay, so with that we can come to the end of this video as of now. So do practice more questions, and at this particular moment I think that my advice should be to revise whatever you have done till now. You can practice more questions at this moment, that is well and good, that should be done. Along with that, you might have done many question papers in the past, while in this previous 2 years or 3 years while you are preparing for this NEET exam. Do practice those questions that you found to be very difficult in those paper, or you might have marked certain questions saying that I couldn't get this during the time of practice test while it was conducted. So yeah, you ask certain questions to your teachers to understand how these questions were done. So those kind of questions that you found difficult in all the practice test or in the studying material given to you in the coaching institute that you are following, all these tough questions are supposed to be discussed over there. Now, this is the time to remember and revise a lot of other things in NCERT. Cover NCERT from top to bottom, and whichever point you are finding difficult to remember over there, write it in a piece of paper and stick it on your wall, and do revise this every day till the day of your NEET exam, and even on the day of exam just before going to the examination hall. Okay, so yeah, very best for all the very best for your exam. Now we'll meet again in the next day.